So, good morning. My name is Iqbal Gorewal, Technical Support Manager here at CADPoint. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, How to Achieve Stunning Design Visualization with the AEC Collection. We have our Media and Entertainment Specialist, Jean-Pierre van Gastel, with us today to provide you with handy tips and an introduction to this popular topic. To give you some background about us, CADPoint is based in Crowthorne, Berkshire. We have a team of experts ready to assist you in all aspects of design. We announced recently that the company was recently taken over and acquired by Greytech UK, and now Greytech is a international BIM fabrication and design software developer for AEC and manufacturing, and also an Autodesk Platinum partner across Europe. We were also partners with some of the most trusted hardware manufacturers in the industry, including HP, NVIDIA, etc. As well as software, our team can also offer introductory training for new customers and advanced courses for experienced users to help you get more from your software. Also, we're excited that being part of Greytech UK will now allow us to offer you a considerable portfolio of technical services and products to enhance design workflow. Benefits of that include industry-specific Greytech software, additional UK training centres, Greytech power packs, technical consulting, and custom software development. So without further ado, you're all here to learn about design visualization. I'll pass you over to Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre, please.
Thank you very much, and a good morning as well from my side. So as you can see in the image, we're gonna talk about teapots, how to render teapots. No, that's just a joke. But a very good thing about this particular image, before I introduce myself a bit more, there's only one light in this scene. Can you imagine just adding one light and getting this kind of quality? So I'm gonna reveal how to do that and lots of other stuff. So my name is Jean-Pierre, or JP. I have a background as an AutoCAD draftsman. I started using AutoCAD in 1992, discovered 3D Studio DOS the year after. And since 1995, I'm working as an evangelist for the Autodesk Media and Entertainment product line. My focus is on design visualization and also real time, so AR, VR. So in this webinar, I'm gonna show you how easy it is to benefit of 3ds Max, which is part of the AEC collection, right? How easy it is to create stunning visuals. And I'm also gonna share lots of tips and tricks. And I do realize that a lot of people do struggle with 3ds Max in the beginning. It's a beast, that's a fact. There are 100,000 buttons. And I'm just going to use maybe 20, 30 buttons to create a stunning design visualization. But first things first, when you start 3ds Max for the very first time from your AEC collection, I really recommend you to just set some basic settings, and then you're good to go. And you can't fail. So a couple of things to mention. Max works with projects, so I recommend you to create a project, a new project, or set an active project. Check if your settings are set to design visualization, and check your units, because that's the biggest tab where you can get huge errors when your units are not set to the right values. So to quickly show you that, and by the way, it's a live presentation, so it's not pre-recorded. So in 3ds Max, when you install Max 2021, your defaults are not set to design visualization. They're set to entertainment. So if you go into the customize menu, you will find what we call the default switcher. And in the default switcher, mine is already set to design visualization, because I'm gonna work with architectural design, but I can also work with product design. So many things like real world scale for textures, automatic shadows for your lights, objects created by layer, that will be affected when you switch to the design vis setting. Default max will be set to max. So that's the first thing to notice. Max will remember this. So this is just once that you have to set that. The second thing, because we're gonna focus on Revit, but I also gonna talk slightly about SketchUp, for instance, check your system units. So in the same menu, in the customize menu, you will find the unit setup, right? In the unit setup, we do have two different unit types. Default, it's set to uh, generic units. And the generic units can be anything. If you want to see metric values, just activate the display unit scale, set it to metric, and then it's up to you what you want to see. If you, for instance, if you measure something. So I like to work in centimeters, um, and this is not the most important one. This is just the display. The most important one, and where many things are going wrong, has to deal with the system unit. So in the system unit, the default is set to inches. So if you start importing Revit files with the default system unit set to inches, you're getting wrong scales in 3ds Max. So be sure to set this one to feet. And why is that? Because Revit itself is hard coded in the kernel of Revit that the system unit is set to feet. Okay, so if you set max to feet, then I don't get any scaling issues. On the background, um, incoming feet is converted, well, not converted, is equals to feet, and every feet is displayed in metric. Okay, so this one doesn't matter. This is the most important one. Just a side note, if you import different CAD formats, maybe mechanical CAD file, this one needs to be set to millimeter. If you import a SketchUp file, this one is depending of the system unit of the SketchUp file, right? So that's where it can go wrong in the beginning. And again, I've said it now, so it's totally fine. Second thing, it's always the second thing in Max, check your active project. Okay, so in the upper right corner, this is where we have, just let me undock it for a bit. So this is the project toolbar where you can create or set an active project. And a project is nothing else than a folder. So if I create a new project, the only thing I need to do is click on create empty, select an empty folder, and that can be a folder which is already part of your Revit project, but just call it 3ds Max, and then you will automatically create a project. So you know all your data files, your render, your scene files, your auto backup files are being stored in that particular project folder. So that's something. It's really important, but it's not very complex. And Max will remember your settings. Also, if you restart Max, first thing to do, check your active project. Okay, that's really important. A bit of viewport navigation. I know it's different. It's different. Although if you're using a 3D Connection 3D mouse, then navigation is similar as in Revit, in AutoCAD, and so on. Obviously, Max does have its own navigation, middle mouse button for panning. We can do Control Alt middle mouse button for zooming. We have the Alt mouse button, middle mouse button for orbit, and the Z key is for zoom extents. In the lower right corner, you also have icons, and if you want to benefit of the view cube, that's also available as well. And then we're gonna dive deeply in how to get your data from Revit into 3ds Max. Best practices, do's and don'ts, and that kind of stuff. Okay, so the good thing is of 3ds Max, it reads the native RVT file. So you don't need to export to FBX. Okay, that's a good thing. Okay, you can export to FBX if you like so, but I like to work with the native file formats whenever possible. right? So on the import process, you're able to select which view do you want to import, and that's a very, very important thing, because in Revit we can create a view template. So literally based on the view template, what objects are visible. So just set visibility graphics. And or do you have a section box? And 3ds Max will only import the current settings of the view, which is great because then you can switch objects off you don't need for your visualization. Or you create a section box, or you just hide objects you don't need, and make combinations. And we can do combine by materials or by category, by family, and switch off RPC objects because they don't make any sense. Okay, so just let me quickly show you how easy that is. And by the way, if you have a final design, I would recommend you to import the file. If the design in Revit is still being changed, then I would recommend to make an active file link to Revit. So if you do any kind of design changes in Revit, you automatically do get an update in 3ds Max, which is great. For now, I have a final design, so just gonna import one of the sample files. It's the golden nugget. It's not a particular small Revit file. It's quite a big file, and I'm gonna briefly talk about the settings and what's happening on the background, so that you can start rendering just in a couple of minutes, and by default getting better image quality than hitting render in Revit. So for the first time, when you start the import process, the Revit server is being activated on the background. So in here, in the import settings dialog, you have access to all the available views. Keep in mind though, this is not the camera. This is just the view template, which you really can benefit from by setting again visibility graphics and or a section box. Then you can do combination rules. You can do combine by Revit material, or you can do combine by Revit category or family and Revit material. The default is do not combine objects, which is something I don't recommend you to do. Always make some combinations because that's gonna make the workflow much more intuitive. Okay. Also, you can set detail levels if you have families with a very specific detail level in there. For sure, I'm gonna import the materials. I want the cameras. I want the daylight system. I want to have the lights RPC switch off. We also have some tessellation. So if you, for instance, if you want to go to real time, you would like to have less tessellation. Okay, so we can change the curved object details. Can simplify the mesh. Just gonna hit OK for now. It starts importing. It's analyzing based on materials. What kind of materials do we have? The golden nugget sample file has been created by an architectural company in Germany. That's why we have all the German material names. Just gonna import all the materials. And in the lower right, or in the bottom corner, we can see how many objects are available in the Revit file and what is Max doing. Okay, 2 years ago, we didn't have any clue. It was just waiting and you hope Max was doing something, but now we do get feedback. And the importing process runs on all my CPU cores. I'm working on a laptop though, so I only have 6 cores making 12 threads. That's all what I have. So it's a bit limited on the laptop. Workstation is much faster, but in general, the import of a Revit file in Max compared with 2 years ago, it's 10 times faster. So this is what we do get, right? So we have an overview of the model. Let me zoom in. I'm using a 3D connection mouse, by the way. We can see all the artificial lights brought into Max. We have access to all the Revit cameras. I need to switch on my Scene Explorer though, which is available by default. Let me quickly dock this one to the left side. So the Scene Explorer, there's nothing else than the database. So this is showing me all my Revit objects based on Revit materials. Okay, so it's just for selecting. If I select an object, for instance, the glass, this is gonna select that particular object, right? So that's how we bring the data in. The first step you're going to do, always you're going to do, is convert the materials. Because now we brought in Autodesk materials and we're going to render with the Hollywood standard render engine, Arnold. But Arnold doesn't know what Autodesk materials are. They're quite old, so there's no need to manually convert all the materials, just benefit of the built-in scene converter. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna convert it. Keep in mind the preset, the default preset is set to ART, which is a render engine. I don't want to render my scene with the ART render. I prefer Arnold. So I'm not gonna let the scene converter change the renderer into ART. I'm just gonna pick any render or I can set it to Arnold. And the only thing what I need to do now is just hit convert scene. And it will automatically convert all your Revit objects like materials, cameras into physical accurate materials, which is gonna make life much more easy. It's gonna ask me, hey, you did a modification on the render. Do you want to save that? No. And immediately I'm able to see the materials in the viewport. This is a super low quality viewport, but we're gonna talk about higher quality viewports. So by default, what's happening? I brought in my sum positioner. So if I select the sum positioner, if I go to modify, I'm able to change the date and time mode. If you want to see the effect of the lighting, the only thing you need to do is set the viewport quality from standard into high quality. Okay. Based on the GPU, this is going to take a couple of seconds. He's compiling shaders, and now we have the feedback of the light, the sunlight. Keep in mind, the viewport itself, it's showing direct light only. So if I have a look at the model, if I, for instance, change the settings of the daylight system, now it's set to manual, because he respected the settings from Revit. If I want to change the date, the time, location, just gonna activate, change date, time, location, and immediately we see, hey, it jumps to a different time period. So timing is set to 8 o'clock in the morning, and it seems to be November the 5th. And obviously, if I start changing the light position, or maybe I change the north offset, this is what I'm gonna get in the viewport. And it's not rendered. This is just the preview of the viewport. We're gonna talk about rendering and how easy it is to render this on high resolution in high quality. But this is what you're gonna get out of the box when you import your Revit file. Okay, so I have my daylight system brought in, and I can save this particular scene. Let me dive back into my guide. So we talked a bit about Autodesk materials to physical. That's a very important part. And again, it's automated. Just use the scene converter, and it's automatically converting materials. Um, in the past, materials were very difficult in 3ds Max to explain, to understand how all the parameters were working. Now we have a physical material, it's physical accurate, it's super simple to create a decent material. Okay. If you have the other side, an asset from an asset store, or you bought a collection with assets and all the assets are created with V-Ray and Corona materials, which are also very popular render engines, the scene converter will also convert those particular materials with to physical materials out of the box. Okay. So let's talk a bit more about viewport settings, which is an important thing as well. So I'm gonna skip to another file. Um, Shall I save it? Yeah, let me save this one. So let me save this into scene, and I'm saving out a max file. That's the default file format. Okay, done. Then I'm gonna open up another scene to show you what the quality of the viewport can be. Okay, because we see so many real-time engines like Enscape and Twinmotion and Lumion. And what about 3ds Max? What can we do with 3ds Max? Okay, so without doing any rendering, just getting high quality viewports. So in this scene, we have obviously we have a couch, some pillows, some tables, and this scene is only lit by an environment. Okay, and the environment is an HDR environment. So that's a 32-bit color-based map. It's used as an environment, and it's just like having a virtual dome with light. So if I now change the quality from standard, this is obvious, this is standard quality. If I change this one to high quality, Mac starts compiling the shaders. Um, and this is what I'm gonna get. So when I set my viewport to high quality, um, based on the environment, just based on the photo, the HDR, my scene is being lit. Okay, so we have some light coming in. Um, we obviously blurred the background. If I want to change the background, for instance, I need to go into the material editor. So if I open up the material editor, in the material editor, we have a map type. It's an OSL, stands for Open Shading Language, and you can find this one in the category Maps OSL environment. And the only thing you need to do is just drag in an HDRI environment. Just let me pick one and drag it in, and immediately Max 2021 will show you pre-shipped HDR files. So we have some of them with studio lighting, with a combination room, some outdoors, a forest, and also on websites like HRI Heaven.com, they provide you up to 500 free of charge, high quality HDRs. So for instance, if you use an HDR like this, there is the sunlight is being captured in the HDR, and your scene will be lit based on the sun in the picture. And also, obviously, you do get the contrast and the color, blah, 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 blah. So if you, and the only thing you need to do is just make a connection with the HDR into the environment. That's literally it. So in the environment, we always have an environment, right? So just make the connection from out to the environment map. And then we can control the quality of the background. So if I select the environment, I'm able to change the rotation value. So by changing the rotation value, I'm actually repositioning the light sources. So this environment has obviously some artificial lights. So I can change the rotation quite easily. We can change the height if we want. I can reposition the height. We can change the amount of light, so literally the exposure. Also, we can change the contrast of the HDR if we want to have less or more contrast. We can change the color, and we can, interesting, use a background blur without rendering, just blurring the background. Okay. And again, when you set the viewport to high quality, this is what you get. It's not rendered. And I can get even to a higher quality uh, by going into my viewport global settings. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. I need to go into per view presets. This is quite new, that we have a blooming effect in the viewport, just like in gaming engines in real time. So if I activate the bloom, I can change the strength of the bloom. Okay, so you do get all this kind of bloom effects, okay? Just like in game engines. And I can also apply bloom to the background. Now it's a bit too strong, just gonna change the strength a bit. Okay, there we go. And again, this is the viewport, okay? And I didn't use render. So I would not recommend you to make a screen capture. Can be done, of course. I can do a screen grab from this and cut it out in Photoshop, but we can also render this just in a couple of seconds. The advantage is when you render this, I can set the resolution I want, okay? Because now in the viewport, I'm not able to define what the resolution of this image is gonna be, okay? So don't be worried. I know we see a lot of real-time engines. Max can do that as well. Max has a great viewport for many years, but it was spread across the complete UI. It was very complicated. Now it's super easy. Just set it to high quality, um, and again set it to standard. That's an amazing result. And also we still have the NPR styles. You know, like what's a color pencil gonna look like? So if I set my view to color pencil, or maybe I can set it to graphite styles, all kind of different NPR styles, which can be rendered, animated, and so on. That's also the good thing about Max. It's not a black box. I'm able to do so many things, you know, like the carpet. That's something I did with a displace map, which can be found on the web. I can do pillows in a matter of 30 seconds. I'm creating a pillow with the cloth modifier. So good stuff, and it's getting easier and easier by every release. Now let's talk about rendering. What kind of render engines do we have in Max, and what is the best thing to do? So in Max we have the Quicksilver hardware renderer, okay? And the Quicksilver hardware renderer is being used when I want to capture the viewport, okay? So if I go into the render setup, by default, it's set to Arnold. Just gonna change to production. So the Quicksilver hardware render is just dumping the viewport to a frame. I can set the resolution, and it renders very quickly. It's gonna render on both CPU and GPU. And also, if you want to render the color pencil effects, the NPR styles, I'm gonna utilize the Quicksilver hardware render. Okay. The other one the other one is it's an older one. It's the ART render engine. It's the same engine as in Revit. It's easy to use. It just has a slider, quality slider. You don't have any control about noise because we want to get rid of the noise in our rendered images. And it's CPU based only. It's CPU based only. So for many years, the ART render was the default render engine in Max as well. But since the introduction of Max 2021, it has been changed to Arnold being the default render engine. Okay. And Arnold is going to deliver you Hollywood quality. It's the industry standard render engine in Hollywood. And with Arnold, you can render on both CPU or GPU, and you have full control. And I'm gonna explain you how easy it is to work with the Arnold render engine. But before, I just want to share you some images, um, both exterior and interior, rendered with Arnold. So this is the quality you can get with 3ds Max. And Arnold is part of the Max installation. Um, there's the dog barking. Sorry for that. It's live. Yeah. And also this is the same setup with a vehicle inside the room. Look at the quality, the car paint. So lighting in Arnold is really high quality. It's Hollywood style. Okay. And it's not complicated to get images like this. Another one, and another one with a depth of field effect, which is also a fact you can't get into in Revit, right? So we have a physical camera, so we have depth of field with a sensor, f-stop value, shutter speed, and so on and so on. So let's talk about how to get into Arnold and what is going wrong, what's going well. So let me switch to another scene. I'm gonna explain you guys that you can start using Arnold this afternoon. So let me up this one, Arnold samples. It's an interior scene with some lights, and I'm also gonna talk about lights. What kind of lights are we going to add to our scene, right? So in the render setup, let me just go back to the render setup. So this is the default. The default render is set to Arnold. The default render resolution is set to HD, 1280 pixels by 720 pixels. Okay, so the command tab, it's always the same. If I switch to Arnold, Quicksilver, blah, blah. The most important one is the Arnold renderer tab. In the Arnold renderer tab, we can see which version of Arnold is installed now. And we have access about the quality. And the quality of Arnold is expressed in samples. Okay. And by default, the samples are maybe a bit too high. Okay. So what we can do, we can start, for instance, with the camera AA samples, which AA stands for anti-aliasing. So literally, what you're gonna do, we're gonna fire rays from the camera view into the scene, right? So, and every ray will bounce off when it hits an object. Okay, and from there on, it's gonna analyze, hey, what kind of shadow do I have? Do I have a reflection? Do I have transmission? Okay, so how easy it is to understand that. Let me gonna open up the Arnold render view. So always use the Arnold render view. Okay, so in the Arnold render view, I'm just gonna make a bit more space, okay? And I'm gonna hit this, yeah, start interactive render. And as soon as I hit this, this is what I get. Immediately, Arnold is showing me an image. It's still noisy, but based on the samples, Arnold is calculating on the noise. Keep in mind though, this is already 1280 by 720. This is the preview quality. Okay. And the cool thing about the Arnold render view, I'm able to interactively change materials, lights, or even render settings, right? So if I go into my Arnold renderer tab, the first thing to notice is the camera AA samples. If I set this to a lower value, let's do 1, okay? The render will be finished in, let's wait a couple of seconds, okay, almost. This took 7 seconds and the rendering is done. 7 seconds for a 1280 frame. It's super noisy, but you know, the other side, other hand, I do get, hey, what is my lighting gonna do? What is my reflections gonna do? So the AA samples for your first draft render, lower it down to 1. And you do get noise, obviously. If I go to, let's do 5 AA samples, that's already a production setting. Okay, I'm getting rid of all the noise, but it's gonna take maybe 4-5 minutes. Um, and but you can immediately see it's already it's clean. It's clean. I don't have any kind of noise anymore, and I'm just rendering on the CPU now. I'm gonna talk about GPU rendering, how to benefit of that if you have a decent GPU. So AA samples is, again, it's for anti-aliasing. And as long as you don't have any motion blur in your scene, 5 samples is super high. Um, so I'm gonna bring this one back to 3. Then we have diffuse samples. Okay, so diffuse samples is your indirect light. So if I tell Arnold I don't want to have any diffuse, now I only have direct light in my Arnold render view. So it becomes darker where I don't have any direct light. The cool thing is we can compare images very quickly, because we can create snapshots. So in the lower right corner of the Arnold render view, I'm able to create a snapshot. Let me finish it. So click, and it's saved. This is image 1. And then gonna activate, let's do maybe 4 diffuse samples. It starts re-rendering automatically. And by the way, samples is always quality. So samples is, um, yeah, if you don't have enough samples, you will get noisy images. And the good thing is of Arnold, you can control how many diffuse samples do you want. So diffuse is for indirect light. Okay, ray depth is how many times the rays are going to bounce in your scene. So if you render out interiors, I always would go for 3, maybe 4 ray depth. If it's an outdoor scene, 1 is probably enough. Okay, so now it's, you see, it's much cleaner, and I only change the diffuse samples. Again, diffuse samples is your indirect light. Okay, um, and I'm rendering on my laptop. It's CPU based now, so I only have 12 threads on my workstation, which is separated. I do have many more CPU cores, but on this one, on my laptop, I have a very good GPU, which I'm going to show you later in the presentation. Render, render, render. Bit impatient here, but you see it's clean. It already starts looking like a photo. It's an HD resolution. Let's see what the rendering time will be. So in the lower right corner again, so render, render. Okay, and again, this kind of quality you never ever gonna get out of Revit, right? And also, if you just import your Revit file into Max, convert to physical material, start Arnold, you are amazed by the quality. So 1 minute 53 seconds for a quality like this. I'm gonna create another snapshot. Okay, so now I can compare images. So this one was with the direct light, and this is direct and indirect light. And I can also set this one as A, so the other one is B, so I can drag with a line to really get a good feeling. Hey, is this direct? Is this indirect light? And so on. Very, very interesting. Other samples, in a nutshell, specular is for reflection. So for reflection, if you have a lot of noise in specular areas, you need more specular samples. Okay. Transmission is for glass. If you have a lot of noise in transmissive area, you need to higher up your transmission samples. This one is very specific, subsurface scattering. That's what I used in the material of the lamp. So the light is emitting through the lamp cover, and that's due to the subsurface scattering effect. And we can also, if you really want to analyze, I'm just gonna lower down the samples for now. We can easily analyze where is the noise coming from. So we have what we call arbitrary output variables, AOVs. And in the AOVs, I'm able to see, hey, what do we have on RGB levels? I want to see the direct light. I want to see the indirect. I want to have access to my specular direct and specular indirect. Okay, so you might ask yourself, hey, what I'm doing now, instead of rendering every pixel into one image, I'm able to separate it out. So if let me clear this one, let me restart my IPR, the Arnold render view. Oh, I don't want to compare this one. Clear A, there we go. And by the way, also interesting, I'm able to select. That's really crazy. If I click on this cloth, I'm literally selecting the cloth in the viewport. So I'm able to select an object in the render view. That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay. So now I have access to my, hey, did I not? Where's my AOVs? Let me quickly get rid of my snapshots. I don't need this one. I don't need this one. Let me check my AOVs. I should have my AOVs in there as well. Okay, then in the Arnold render view, hit render. Okay, and also interesting in the Arnold render view, if you think, hey, my image is too bright, it's too dark, we have access to exposure. So immediately you can change the amount of light in the renderer itself. And with the latest update, we also have Arnold images, so we can do tone adjustments, we can do color corrections, we can do lens effects, and in the near future there will be many more images available. And also very nice, we can switch between the cameras in the Arnold render view. And now I'm able to show you guys what is going on. So this is my direct lighting AOV. So this is only direct. This is my indirect lighting AOV. So if I see a lot of noise, I do realize, hey, I need to go to higher diffuse samples. Let's check the specular. So this is specular direct. Okay, this looks clean. And this is my specular indirect. That looks also quite clean. I don't see a lot of noise in there. So AOVs can help you to identify where is the noise coming from. And also what I said, this is really nice. Just switch the camera in the render view. Can you imagine that? Just switch the camera and you get an update. So again, Arnold, trust me, if the guys in Hollywood are able to render Captain America or Avengers with Arnold, you should be able to render your Revit file as well. So sampling, that's an important thing, and that's the most important thing. That's it. That's a good thing about Arnold. It's super user friendly. So Arnold Render View available since I believe now 6 months. It's super interesting. We can also do render selected region snapshots. I showed you a bit like that. And then we can have a word about Arnold lights. So what lights are compatible um, from a Revit point of view? Obviously, the daylight system, that's what we have seen, and your photometric lights. So your IES light profiles are being imported into 3ds Max. So you can benefit from that, but I also like to change sometimes to different lights because the lighting with Arnold, it's really, again, it's the Hollywood quality. Okay, so we have different light types, which I'm going to show you. We have a sky dome light. Um, we have a physical sky. We have a quad light. So quad lights used a lot in interior lighting because it's really fast and gives a very decent quality of light. Then we have a distant light. So if you want to have a parallel light source, like if you want to have sun rays into your scene, we have cylindrical lights, we have disc lights. So and that's so important, you know, with interior design visualization. Lighting is it's everything, also exteriors, but you know, and there are so many rules being can be applied to lighting, from cool and warm light and profiles and all that kind of lighting techniques. And also very interesting, we have a mesh light, so every mesh can be converted in a light source, which is really nice, right? So let me quickly talk a bit about the lights in Arnold. I'm just gonna switch back to my Arnold exterior. Just gonna show you how quickly you can benefit from an Arnold light. Okay, so this is my imported scene. What I did add in Max is just a plane, a ground plane, and I took some cars out of the Max library. And for the rest, it's completely the default scene, right? So if I open up my Arnold render view, let me go back into Arnold render view. This is gonna hit render. This is what you get out of the box, right? So this is just import the Revit file, convert with the scene converter to physical material, hit render, and this is what you're gonna get. Okay, it's super high quality and it's super fast. Okay, still running on the CPU. Okay, render time this maybe 2 minutes, and that's it. It's still a bit blue, so I need to compensate for the white balance. But let's work a bit more on the sky. So let me stop this one. So in the environment, in the Max environment, we have the imported physical sun and sky environment from Revit. I don't want to use this one, so I'm just gonna use the deselect use map. I don't want it. I'm just gonna add a light. So in Max, I'm going to create, going to lights. I'm going to the Arnold category, and that's just one light. It's called the Arnold light. But the Arnold light does have all the different light types. So what I want a sky dome light. I'm just gonna click in there. So the sky dome light does have obviously a color. It does have a Kelvin temperature. It does have an intensity value. And the good thing is immediately start our Arnold render view. So that we're able to see, hey, what is my Arnold Sky Dome light doing? So this is a virtual dome surrounding my scene. If I want to see it, I can just activate light shape visible. So if you change the color, for instance, immediately you do get that kind of effect. If you think it's too bright, I can change the exposure value in there, and it will update my scene. So if I want to have a sun in the sky dome, I can use a texture. So I'm just gonna use a Arnold physical sky. So I'm gonna change the Revit physical sky into the Arnold physical sky. So it's in Arnold environment physical sky. There we go. Just gonna hit re-render or start IPR, and ta-da! Look what we got. That's amazing. The quality is so much better by just changing the Arnold into the Arnold physical sky. It can still compensate, for exposure value. And if I want to have access about the position of the sun, I can do that as well. I can easily still switch between the camera views. Let's see what's my north direction doing in there. I can do that so I have the exposure of the light, and we also have exposure of the camera itself. Okay, so this is gonna provide you a much higher. Oh, that's a 3D view. That's a bad viewport camera. There we go. Um, and this is again, it's less than 1 minute. Just convert the sky, and you do get a super high quality automatically. So and typically exterior scenes use a sky dome. Interiors can benefit from that as well, because you do get light through your window frame. Okay, and as long as you have a glass material, you're good to go. Okay, on the let me talk about materials. Yeah, because I need to check the time. 10 minutes left. Okay, so Arnold materials. We have the physical material. That's an important one, and we have also a very specific. If you're more an intermediate user, then you might also start working on Arnold standard surface materials, because that material has some very specific additional options like sheen. So if I really want to create a super high quality cloth material like satin, silk, velvet, then I probably would start using an Arnold standard surface material. So let me show you a couple of things, how easy it is to work on the materials. So I'm gonna open up a large scene. Okay, I'm gonna talk about what kind of textures am I using, how complicated is that, and what kind of materials. So this is a scene imported, just a scene from SketchUp, but it can obviously also be a Revit file. So this is already has a material. I'm gonna open up the material editor. So in the material editor, if you want to get the material, use the material get from selected. So this is a glass material. And I'm gonna show you how easy it is to create a decent looking glass material. I'm gonna start the Arnold render view. By the way, scene has been lit with an HDR. Okay, so I only have the HDR surrounding the scene. And this is the default physical material, so it's only showing reflections out of the box. So the physical material, so if you really want to build good looking materials, so based on surface properties like reflections and transmission, then I would recommend you to use the physical material. So it has some basic parameters. So there's a base color and reflection value. There's some roughness in there. And as soon as I change this material into being a transparent material, just setting the value to 1, this is what I'm getting. It's just a parameter called transparency. That's it. Okay. So, and the transparency is automatically creating a decent looking glass. The index of refraction depends on how many reflection do I have in the glass. If I want to change the color of the glass, the only thing I need to do is change the transparency color. So if I go to a bit more like a bluish tint, I'm tinting the glass, and immediately you see in 2-3 seconds I'm getting an update. Let me just orbit a bit to get a view more inside the glass. There we go. And if I want to have some roughness, I can do roughness in the glass as well. Just a 0.1, so 10% roughness, and immediately I'm able to see the effect. So in combination with the Arnold render view, it's so easy to work on your lights, on the materials, because we do get consciously, we do get feedback. That's a very interesting approach. And same goes for the water. You know, if I want to have the water material, just gonna select the water. I clicked in the render, just gonna get the material. Did I create a material in there? Oh, it's just gonna he's loading it in while I'm rendering. That might take a that might take a couple of seconds. Okay. On my laptop, but it will be there. Okay, there we go. There's the water material. Okay, and again, the only thing what I need to do is set the water material. Just click it once, set the transparency to 1, and I'm able to look into the water based on the depth. This is also an interesting parameter. So based on this one, I can define how deep is the water surface, and I can tint it. I can add roughness in there, and this is gonna help to get a super high quality material. The other side, if you have textures, it's super easy. Let me quit the render. If you go to websites like textures.com, so let me quickly go to textures.com. On textures.com, we have PBR materials. So with PBR materials, if you select a material, you do get, and this is, by the way, this is the quality you're gonna get in the render. So you can immediately download the belonging maps. So this one for the color, this is the normal map, the roughness map, and the height map. How easy is that? It's super easy. Let me quickly do that. Gonna clear the view. Imagine if I want to change this material, the wood, gonna get the material from the selected. Now it's a physical material out of the box because we use the scene converter. If you just want to benefit from textures, instead of using a physical material, my recommendation would be use a PBR material. Just drag it in, select it, right click on the material, so you can assign the material, and then just browse to the textures you've been downloading and drag them in. So albedo goes to albedo, the normal goes to the normal, and the roughness goes to the roughness. And that's the only thing you need to do. You're done. Okay, so if we now hit render, I might change the size of the tiles can do that. And again, this is how easy it is. Yeah, the size is a bit too big. But I have decent normal maps, so we have a high quality bump, and it's just like easy as that. Just download the textures, throw them into a PBR material, and you're good to go. Okay, and final part is denoising. So if you have a lot of noise, very specifically on interiors, you can benefit of the CPU denoiser. So the CPU denoiser is just a post-processing effect. So if you have a lot of noise, you render the image, you save it with noise, and Arnold will clean it up for you based on your CPU. And we also can benefit of a GPU denoiser. So if you're using the latest NVIDIA GPUs, like the RTX graphics card, it's quite easy to set that up as well. Just in the render setup, we have our denoisers. Can do two things: optics denoiser, apply and beauty, so it will automatically post process your noisy images and it will clean up all the noise. But again, this needs to have a NVIDIA GPU. And the other one, the CPU denoiser, is this one. That's the Arnold denoiser, where you have an input, that's your rendered image with a lot of noise, and you set an output image, then click denoise, and your noise will be gone. So literally, render time on super high resolution images, 3 minutes, 4 minutes maximum. And I'm talking 4K, 5K images. And it doesn't need to take more than 3-4 minutes on super high quality if you have a decent GPU. Okay. So that was a lot. That was a lot to cover. So now let's have a look at the questions. I can imagine that you have many questions, but hopefully you do understand that Max out of the box needs just a few settings, and the render engine, it's great. The viewport is looking great, and keep in mind you have access to 3ds Max in your AEC collection.
Fantastic, Jean-Pierre. That was very detailed, very informed. Had me hooked the whole way through. Um, a lot of advanced stuff there, I say, as well, and a lot of, like you said, you can set that all up just out from the setup from a 3ds Max. Appreciate that. Thank you so much for that presentation there. Should we dive into the questions? Are you ready?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Perfect. So, I mean, we had a few people who were just asking about setting it up just in a more, it seems a bit advanced for them, I suppose, but it's not really advanced. If you follow the step by step, you should be able to pick all these up, all these options and everything up the way you want to. It's really about how you want to utilize the software. Is that right? So you
Absolutely. Yeah. And with Max, don't get distracted by the 100,000 buttons. I know there are 100,000 buttons, but that's a lot of legacy stuff in there, because it has his 30th birthday last year. But just focus
right.
on a couple of steps and you're good to go. And it's not complicated at all. Just take a couple of rehearsals and you're good to go.
Yeah, it does take a bit of playing around, doesn't it? Essentially, what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys really needed something to have a look at the introduction to 3ds Max, something that we want to look into for us to do for you, please send us an email, support@counterpoint.co.uk, and we can try and look into that for you guys separately or as a webinar like this in the future. So yeah, please post your questions. Carry on posting your questions within the chat box or the question and answer box. One question from Graham was, what is the best strategy for materials and material locations when working in BIM 360, particularly working with Arnold and V-Ray? Probably, you could probably answer for Arnold, I suppose. This is with BIM 360, so this is interesting. So how do you connect the two?
Yeah, you can't connect BIM 360 right into 3ds Max. So you need to be able to get access to your textures on a network drive or a local drive. Textures are always being placed on a location, but again, it can be on a network, can be in the cloud, as long as you can access the texture by adding a path. So you can set a custom path where you can tell Max, hey, you need to look for the textures at this specific location. Um,
Mhm.
Materials are always stored in the scene files itself, both with Arnold and V-Ray, but textures need to be on a specific location.
Mhm.
To be honest, if you really want to get high quality rendering, I would recommend to change the incoming Revit textures to a much higher quality. Just what I did, because in Revit you don't have a normal map, for instance, that doesn't exist, and lots of other very specific high quality maps are not available in Revit. Only the basic map for color, the basic map for bump, and that's about it.
Okay, great. So when you talk, yeah, that's with Arnold. With Vira, I suppose you can all, again, it's about putting it on the cloud if you needed it
Yeah,
to work within the cloud anywhere else within 360. I suppose about getting those locations
yeah, that's it. Just add the
defined
path
correctly.
and you're good to
Yeah,
go. Yeah, yeah,
fantastic. So the question again, you might have picked up on during you did show us a little bit about talking about your PC or your laptop that you're using. So you're saying on the laptop, the CPU was what which allowed you to render quickly, but on your desktop you can do even further, even quicker.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because on my laptop I only have 12 threads. Well, on my workstation I have 48 threads,
Wow.
and it will be upgraded soon that I do have up to 110 threads. So then it's
Okay.
gonna be 10 times faster.
Right, right, right. And but just in terms of stuff like you probably are looking at more GPU or CPU for rendering in 3ds Max.
Yeah, both, but the GPUs are changing rapidly. I see an announcement of Nvidia where they are announcing the new generation of RTX based cores where they
Mhm.
have up to 10,000 cores in the GPU. Um, there's only one disadvantage of GPU rendering. You need to have enough memory on the GPU. So if your scene is too large and it can't fit into the memory of the GPU, you can't render it.
Yeah,
CPU, yeah, can always render it because 64 gigabyte memory, that's the standard in a computer um, these days.
right.
Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
and it also
Okay, yeah,
depends on budget,
exactly,
um,
definitely.
and what kind of processor do you have. If you have a look at the AMD Threadripper, it have built in 128 cores.
Hmm.
That's super quick when you start rendering with Arnold on the CPU. The other hand, if you have two RTX GPUs in the same computer,
Yeah,
yeah, you will benefit from the GPU power.
yeah. So there's this kind of a trade. It's kind of a not experimental, but
Hmm.
I think you've got to get the best of both worlds, I believe, and the RAM probably minimize minimal to get that sort of fast thing. You're looking at about 32, I suppose, 32 gigabyte RAM, or
Yeah, at least. I would
at
recommend
least.
60, 64 gig.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, and just another one from Kieran. Just what laptop model are you using? If you could possibly, just the spec of it real quick. Would you know what, Kieran? We can probably provide you with something like that if Jean-Pierre wants to provide us with that. We'll give you an email specifically about what you're using. But like if you said you're using an AMD processor, aren't you? I'd imagine with your.
No, I'm
Oh, you're not.
actually I did this live presentation on a HP ZBook with a single Xeon processor in there,
Okay. Okay.
and the GPU is an NVIDIA RTX 5000.
RTX 5000. Okay, interesting. Okay, so not
But
GeForce or
keep
anything
in
like that. No.
mind, a laptop is nice because it doesn't take a lot of space.
Mhm.
In normal circumstances, I do travel a lot. That's why I do have a very decent laptop. But if I was doing production, I always would prefer a workstation, a
Yeah,
dedicated workstation, because
yeah,
I can have so many more CPU cores in there, and it's also much cheaper compared with a 3D
exactly.
high-end graphics laptop. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
I
quite
would say the
expensive.
same. Rendering wise, you need a dedicated workstation that has all this and doesn't need to do anything else.
No,
So you can just go on that. So
yeah,
definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Um, just wondering all the wonderful stuff that you showed us today. Ruth was wondering, is it similar in 2019, or is it these are updates for ID, the Arnold render view and everything updated just for 2021?
Arnold Render View is available as long as you install the latest Arnold plugin. And the Arnold plugin is available also for Max 2019, 2020, and 2021. Just go to the arnoldrenderer.com website and
Mm-hmm.
download the latest plugin for your Max version. Um, the only thing you can't do is the viewport bloom effects, like the real-time effects. That's not available in Max 2019. And also the import of the Revit files is gonna be 10 times slower, because back then we didn't benefit of the parallel processing of importing Revit files.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So just a few different sweet changes which
Yeah,
do
yeah,
make a big
and the
difference.
PBR material. We didn't
That's
have
right.
the PBR materials, which is now super easy. Just select PBR, drag in textures, and it looks fantastic.
Yeah. So I'd recommend Ruth just to move up to see if you can to 2020 or 2021 to get those benefits come in. Um, that's great. So again, we've got a question. David is not able to open his Arnold render viewer, but we can have a look into that. David, if you send us a few more details via email, support@catapult.co.uk, myself and Jean-Pierre can have a look into that, particularly why that might happen. Um, I think that might be specific to you, and then we'll see if that is. Also from Jack, is there any way to link Navisworks timeliner models or animations? So 3ds Max and Navisworks.
There is a plugin available. It's a commercial plugin for doing that. Yeah, yeah. I know
Okay.
the guy is a Dutch guy. He wrote it as a plugin for Max, going with the timeline from Navisworks into 3ds Max.
Did he wrote it? Oh, yeah, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and
It's
I believe,
it's commercially available.
yeah, it's commercially available. I believe it's about 100 euros or something.
Right. Right. Okay. Interesting. And tell you what, Jack, Jean-Pierre, if you send us, Jack, we'll send you some details over about that in particular. So where to find that and what it might do. That's all right, Jean-Pierre. So we'll pass that over to Jack
Cool.
later on today. Yep. Perfect. I think that's all about it. I think we are wrapping up now. We're good. Just gone slightly over time. Appreciate everybody staying with us right now. And I didn't say it before, should have said it again. Happy New Year. Let's hope 2021 is much better and we create stunning visualizations in 2021 much better than 2020. So just to let you know a few things, you've probably seen it in the chat box there. We've got another webinar coming up next week. I think it's our last for the season. We are got our moving from 2D to BIM workshop coming up for next week. So we had great success of this workshop in the past previous months at last year, and we've now got another chance for you guys to attend our 2-part webinar. So interesting, are you an architect that wants to learn more from BIM, or do you need to create a BIM strategy suitable for your business? Then please join this 2-part webinar where you'll hear from our technical consultants, Lee Milligan and Jonathan Reinhardt, on how businesses have successfully made the transition from 2D to BIM. So that will be sent to you in the chat box, and also an email will be sent to you about that as well. Please have a look at it, register for it, and please attend if you can. That's next week, 28th of January. So there'll be 2 parts, one in the morning, one in the early afternoon. That's it really. Well, I think everybody's had enough of us today, Jean-Pierre. And please get back to us with any other questions you may have. Thank you so much again for your expertise and your time today on this, JP. It's been very beneficial, and I want to see if we can all create teacups like that now, knowing what we know from today. Again, this recording is recorded, so it will be available in the next 24 hours this week. So it should be up on our YouTube channel this week. We'll send you details about that as well. Okay, any other questions? No, it looks like we're good. Again, once again, thanks a lot, Jean-Pierre. We'll see you soon. All right, have a great day. Bye, guys. Stay safe.